The girl in the trash. The sun was cold on planet Orion. 9 buildings were tall, silver, and shining. Roads were clean like glass. Humans lived here in peace and order. Machines cleaned the streets every morning. Flying cars moved in the sky like birds. One morning, a strange girl was digging through the trash behind a food center. She had gray skin, thin arms, and big dark eyes. Her hair was full of dust and wires. She looked like a shadow. People walking by saw her and turned away. Some said, "Dirty alien." Some said, "Not our problem." One man threw a half-eaten meal near her and laughed. She didn't even look up. She kept looking for something inside the garbage. Children stared and whispered. Security bots scanned her but ignored her. She was not human. So not important. She was not dangerous, so not a threat. She was nothing to them. Then someone stopped. A man with a toolbox in his hand. He wore a dark jacket and had oil stains on his face. His name was Daniel. He was a repair tech. Simple job, simple life. He looked at the girl and saw something strange in her eyes. Not fear, not anger, but silence, like she had seen too much, like she had lost everything. Stepped closer. The girl flinched. She was ready to run, but she was too tired, too weak. Daniel said slowly, "Come with me." The girl looked confused. He put down his toolbox and offered his hand. She looked at it like it was a weapon. Then slowly she touched it. Very cold, very light. Daniel led her through the back path to avoid attention. People watched but said nothing. Just another crazy human with broken junk. His room was small but warm. Old screen on the wall. One bed, one chair, one robot cat sleeping in the corner. He brought some food and placed it on the table. The girl sat on the floor. She didn't eat. She stared at the food like it was poison. Daniel took a small bite first. Then she started eating slowly, like she had not eaten for days. Maybe weeks. Daniel tried talking. "What's your name? Where are you from?" She said nothing, just kept looking at the light like she forgot what stars looked like. Then she stood up and walked to the wall, took a piece of old wire from her belt. She started drawing symbols, circles, lines, dots, very fast, like she had done it before. Again and again. Daniel watched confused. Then something strange happened. One of the symbols glowed softly, blue light, very soft but alive, like it was breathing. The robot cat jumped and hissed. The girl stepped back. Daniel walked to the wall and touched the glowing sign. It was warm, almost like a pulse. He asked her, "What is this?" The girl looked into his eyes and whispered only one word, "Safe." Then she sat in the corner and closed her eyes. That night Daniel could not sleep. He kept looking at the symbol. It was still glowing, like it was watching him. He checked the room power, all normal. He checked the air system, normal. But still something was wrong. Or maybe something was waking up outside the window. The night sky was full of quiet stars. But Daniel felt something coming. He didn't know what, but he knew one thing. That girl, she was not just lost. She was not just homeless. She was something else. And now she was in his life. And the world would never be the same again. A home for her. The morning light was soft. Inside the small room, the girl sat near the corner watching the wall. The glowing symbol was still there like a quiet fire. Daniel made tea in the old machine. Steam rose like a ghost dancing in the air. He placed a cup near her, but she did not touch it. She was watching the window, eyes moving slowly like she was waiting for something to appear. Daniel spoke gently, trying again. "What is your name?" She looked at him but said nothing, just placed her hand on her chest and tapped twice, then pointed at the wall. Daniel thought maybe it was her way of saying something, but he did not understand. He nodded anyway and said, "My name is Daniel." The girl blinked once, then looked down at the robot cat near her feet. The cat sniffed her shoes, then curled beside her like it trusted her. She reached out and touched its head, soft and slow. The machine made a quiet humming sound. Daniel was surprised. That cat never liked strangers. He opened his old tablet and searched alien languages. Nothing matched her symbols. He scanned the wall with a small tool. The glow was not electrical, not magnetic, not known. Something new, something different. Later, he brought clothes and a blanket for her. She touched the fabric like it was gold, folded it neatly, and placed it near her. She did not wear them, just held the blanket while sitting silently. Daniel fixed broken machines for work. Today he stayed home, told the system he was sick. He watched the girl as she traced invisible lines in the air, patterns like stars, shapes like maps. Her fingers moved with perfect memory. He offered food again. This time she ate without fear. Her eyes watched his face while she chewed. Daniel felt strange, like he was being studied. Not by a child, but by something wiser. Older hours passed and the symbol on the wall started changing. It pulsed faster like a heartbeat. The girl stood up and walked to it. She touched the center, and the light faded slowly. Then she whispered a word in her own tongue. Daniel recorded it. The sound was soft but sharp like wind through wires. He asked what it meant. She looked at the sky through the window and said, "Call." Daniel paused. Call what? Call who? But she did not answer. That night the rain came, heavy drops against the window. Girl stood up and walked outside into the rain. Daniel followed her quickly, holding a jacket over her head. She stood in the middle of the street, looking up, arms open, eyes wide. Raindrops ran down her face like tears. Daniel said, "Come inside, you. We'll get sick." She turned to him and whispered again, "Sky is clean." Daniel did not understand but said nothing. They returned inside, and she sat near the wall again. This time she took small wires from her belt and placed them on the floor. She closed her eyes. The wires lit up for a second, then turned off. Daniel watched amazed. He said, "What are you doing?" She opened her eyes and whispered. Listening, Daniel could not sleep again. He sat at the table and looked at her drawings. He noticed one new symbol on the wall. It looked like a planet with rings. He searched it on his tablet. Closest match was a planet destroyed years ago by a mining accident. A dead world, no survivors, only dust. He showed her the image. She stared at it without blinking, then slowly reached out and touched the screen. Her finger stopped on a small area near the pole of the planet. She whispered again, "Home." Daniel's breath slowed. She was from there, that dead place. But how did she survive? How did she get here? Said you came alone. She nodded once, then drew a small star beside the planet symbol, then another. Then another. Daniel realized she was drawing a path, a journey from that dead planet to this colony. Across space alone. He looked at her and asked why. "Did you come here?" She tapped the glowing mark on the wall and said, "Safe place." Daniel whispered back, "Yes, safe now." Girl finally pulled the blanket around her and lay down, her eyes closed slowly. Peacefully, Daniel sat near the table staring at the symbols again. They were more than drawings. They were messages, codes, secrets. Outside the rain fell without end. Inside the girl slept like a quiet storm, waiting to rise again. Daniel knew one thing now. This girl was not a mistake, not a beggar, not a stray. She was something important, something powerful, and she had come here for a reason. He just did not know what it was yet. The secret in her eyes. The morning came slow like a tired wave across the sky. The city was already alive with sound and metal. Daniel stood in the kitchen making breakfast. The girl sat near the window, tracing the glass with her finger. She was drawing again, but this time she was not using wires or chalk, just water drops from her breath, symbols fading in seconds, but full of meaning. He handed her a warm piece of bread. She took it gently and gave a small nod. Then she pointed at the machine in the corner, the medical scanner Daniel had repaired last month. She walked to it and touched its side. Then she looked at him with eyes that held something heavy, something deep. Daniel asked softly, "You want a scan?" She nodded once, then stepped into the machine quietly, like she had done it before, like she knew what would happen. The scanner buzzed to life. Blue lights moved over her skin. It showed bones, joints, organs, just like any living creature. But then the machine stopped. A sharp sound came from inside. An error screen appeared in red. Unknown core detected. Daniel stared. He had never seen that message before. Smoke began to rise from the scanner. The girl stepped out calmly. She was not afraid. She placed her hand on the side of the machine, and it shut down without command. Daniel asked what was that. She looked at him for a long time. Then she spoke for the first time in clear English. 3 words. "They are coming." His heart skipped. He stepped closer. "Who is coming?" She sat down on the floor and looked at the glowing wall symbol. She whispered, "I called them. Not all. Only one." Daniel asked again who she touched. her chest, then pointed up sky, then drew a spiral in the air, like a galaxy turning in silence. Sat beside her, trying to connect the pieces. She had something inside her, something the scanner could not read, something the system could not name. Now she was calling someone, not out of fear, not for help, but as part of a plan. She stood and went to the window, watched the sky like it would open any second. Then she turned to Daniel and said, "You are not like others, you did not run." Daniel felt the weight of her words. He had only offered kindness, but now it felt more like a test, like a choice that mattered beyond him. She walked back to the wall. Her fingers moved fast. New symbols began to appear, glowing like before. But this time, there were two that blinked, one red, one white. Daniel asked what they meant. She said, "Safe or burn." He did not speak, could not speak. The girl sat again with the robot cat now resting on her lap. She whispered something in her language. The robot responded with a small sound, like it understood. Hours passed. Daniel tried to repair the scanner, but the core was dead, burnt from inside, like it had touched something too strong. That night the girl placed her hand on Daniel's forehead, closed her eyes and showed him something. He was not asleep, not awake. He saw a sky full of light, ships burning across the stars, voices screaming, a world dying. He saw a child standing alone on black rock, looking up, waiting. Then she opened her eyes. Daniel was shaking. He asked, "How did you show that?" She said, "Memory share, not often, only trust." He looked into her eyes, dark, endless, but inside them stars. She said, "I was child when they came, took our sky, our light. We sent message, no one came." Daniel said, "Humans did that." She looked away, pain in her breath. He asked, "Why come here?" She said, "Because some still listen." The glowing symbol on the wall turned green, soft and calm. Daniel understood a signal had been received. She said, "They heard me." He said, "Who are they?" She looked at him with eyes that held fire. Family. He felt fear now, not of her, but of what was coming, of what she had called. She stood tall now, not broken, not lost, but ready. Daniel whispered, "What happens now?" She replied, "Truth comes." And then the sky cracked with thunder. But no storm followed, only light. Hunted night had fallen like a curtain of shadows. But sleep did not come, not to Daniel, not to the girl, not to the sky. The green symbol on the wall was still glowing, brighter than before, faster, like a pulse on the edge of panic. The girl stood still in the center of the room, hands open, eyes wide, listening to something only she could hear. Daniel watched without speaking, his breath slow, his mind racing. Then the room shook, a soft tremor, like something heavy had landed nearby. Lights outside blinked once, then flickered and died. Daniel moved to the window. The city was still glowing, but the block around them was dark, quiet, too quiet. The girl whispered, "They found me." Daniel asked who. She pointed to the sky, then to the ground. Both suddenly, a red beam scanned through the window. Daniel pulled her away and ducked behind the table. She looked at him, no fear in her face, only acceptance. Daniel asked, How? Did they track you?" She said, "I called someone else, but someone else heard." Another tremor, then a knock at the door. Not a knock like a hand, but a knock like metal breaking wood. Daniel said, "Run." She said, "No." He grabbed his toolkit, opened a hidden panel on the floor, said, "Go there, hide." She stepped in without question. The door burst open. Two soldiers stepped inside, not human, machines in black armor. Eyes red, voices flat, searching for Unit X-17. Daniel stood up, face calm, said, "This is a private home. No unit here." They scanned him, then scanned the room. Their heads turned to the glowing wall. The light flickered, then dimmed. The machines moved forward, reached for the wall. Then one stopped, its hand burned. It stepped back. Error, unstable energy. Daniel said, "You should leave. They said this unit is hiding a fugitive." Before they could move again, the floor panel burst open. The girl stepped out, eyes glowing, skin brighter, voice louder. She said, "I am not hiding." The machines froze for a second, processing unknown behavior. Then they moved. One fired a stun beam. It hit her chest, but she stood still, no pain, no fall. She raised her hand. A wave of invisible force hit both machines. They crashed against the wall like toys. Sparks flew, limbs twitched. Daniel Watched mouth open, hands shaking. She turned to him and said, I told you they are coming. He asked, what are you? She walked toward him, placed her hand on his heart, said, I was born like you, but changed by fire. He heard more sounds outside, more soldiers. More steps. He said, we must run. She said, they will follow. He opened the back door, led her through alleys, old tunnels under the colony. The robot cat followed silently. Every screen they passed blinked red. Alert level rising. Target in motion. Unit X-17. Must be contained. Daniel asked, what is X-17? She said, that is what they call me, not who I am. They reached an old train station abandoned since the first colony phase. Dust on the floor, vines on the wall. The girl walked to the control panel, touched it. It came alive, lights blinking, circuits humming. Daniel asked, how did you do that? She said, machines listen when you speak their language. A train door opened. They stepped inside. It moved without track, floating just above the ground. Daniel sat beside her, said, why are they afraid of you? She said, because I remember. He asked, remember what? She looked at the window, at her reflection, and said, everything. Outside the machines searched. Inside the memory moved like fire. Daniel knew this was not the end, only the beginning. She had power, she had knowledge, and now she had an enemy, but she also had him, and that was something new. Memories of a lost world. Train moved through tunnels that had no lights, only echoes of time and forgotten voices. The girl sat with her hands folded, eyes closed but mind open. Daniel sat beside her, not asking questions anymore. He had learned some answers came without words. The train passed through magnetic gates and old checkpoints. No alarms, no cameras, just dust and silence. She opened her eyes slowly, looked at the wall of the train where light danced like water. She placed her hand on the metal. It changed, turned into a screen, a memory screen. Daniel stared as the screen came to life. Not pixels, not data, but living memory. He saw a world not like Earth, skies purple with silver clouds, mountains floating in the air, rivers glowing with soft blue light. Children ran through green fields with skin like pearl, eyes like glass, laughter like music. She pointed to a small girl holding a glowing stone, said softly, that was me. Daniel watched as ships filled the sky, big human ships carrying machines drilling into the land, breaking the ground. The people tried to talk, but no one listened. Tried to stop, but no one saw. She said, we gave signals, we sent warnings, but humans called it resource zone. He saw fire spread across the land, forests burned, waters turned black, creatures vanished into ash. The small girl ran into a hidden cave, her arms holding a broken device, her eyes filled with fear and light. She said, my father was scientist, my mother was speaker, both lost. I survived. Daniel asked, how did you escape? She drew a line across the air, a hidden path through space. One ship, one chance. He asked, why come here? She said, I followed the last signal, a hope from this colony, but hope was gone when I arrived. He said, then why stay? She said, because I saw your face. Daniel looked down, felt the weight of history in her voice. She said, I walked the streets, saw the machines, smelled the fear, but you saw me. He asked, are there others like you? She shook her head, eyes wet but strong. I was seed, last spark, now flame. The screen shifted, showed a human council meeting, big men in clean suits, saying big words. One of them spoke about the incident on her planet, called it unintentional, a regretful accident. She said they knew, but silence is easy. Daniel felt anger rise in his chest, not at her, not at the past, but at the lie. She touched his hand, said, truth hurts, but heals. The train stopped near a canyon edge, a hidden base, long forgotten walls covered in moss and code. They stepped out. The air here was colder, thinner. Inside the base, old machines still worked, solar panels still blinking. She walked to a console, spoke her language. Wall opened, revealed a crystal orb spinning slowly. She said, this holds memory of my people, our science, our songs, our stars. Daniel asked, why show mesh? Said, because you must choose. He said, choose what? She replied, if I fall you carry this. Daniel looked at the orb, saw flashes of light and shadow, a whole world inside. He said, I am no hero. She said, you are human. That is enough. They stood in silence. The only sound was the hum of the crystal. She said, I am not angry anymore. I am awake. Daniel nodded. He understood now. She was not just lost. She was purpose. Outside, a light flickered in the sky. Not star, not moon, but ship. She turned to him, sighed. They are close, but I am ready. He asked, will they kill you? She said, only if they fear me. He stepped closer, sighed. Then let them see you. The crystal glowed brighter, responding to her breath, her blood, her will. Daniel whispered, what is your real name? She placed her hand on his chest, said a word in her tongue. He asked, what does it mean? She smiled, said light after ruin. The message. The sky above the canyon turned silver without warning. Clouds moved in strange shapes like symbols being written by invisible hands. The girl stood outside the base, her eyes closed, her hands raised. Daniel watched from the doorway, afraid to speak, afraid to breathe. The crystal orb floated behind her, glowing like a star ready to break free. It was no longer just memory. It was alive. She said softly, they heard me. Daniel stepped forward, his boots heavy on the metal floor. Who heard you? Her voice was calm, but filled with something ancient. Family far above. A sound began to hum through the sky, low and steady like the voice of a god hiding behind stars. Daniel turned to the old base console. It was flashing new light signals from space, not from Earth, not from the human colonies, but from somewhere beyond charted systems. She walked inside and touched the console. Her fingers moved like wind across water. The language on screen changed into her symbols. The system obeyed her, like it remembered her soul. Daniel said, what is the message? She turned the screen toward him. A star map appeared. One star marked in gold, moving fast, coming closer. She said, they answered, not all, but one. Daniel asked, what will they do? She looked into his eyes without blinking. That depends on me. The robot cat walked near her feet and sat down, its tail still, its body quiet. It too was listening. She said, I sent 2 messages, one to family, one to enemy. Now both come. Daniel felt the weight of choice rise like smoke inside his chest. He asked, what do you want from Mesh? Placed the orb in his hands. It pulsed softly like a heart. She said, if I fall, you must tell the story. Daniel looked at the orb and saw shadows of children playing on her world. He saw towers of light and oceans that glowed. He saw destruction. He saw fire. He held the orb tighter. I will keep it safe. She smiled. That is why I chose you. Suddenly a sharp tone echoed through the canyon. A beam of red light came from above and scanned the rocks. Then a voice, mechanical and cold. Target located. Engage. Daniel pulled her behind the wall. Dust flew from the mountain. A ship black and white appeared from the clouds. Not her family, not her people, but the hunters. She said, they came faster than I thought. Daniel asked, what do we do? She said, we show them truth. The old base systems powered up, doors, locked, panels lit up. The crystal orb floated to the center of the room. She walked to it and placed her hand above it. A wave of blue light filled the air. It passed through walls, through metal, through sky. The enemy ship paused, its weapons dimmed, its engines soft. Inside the ship, voices argued. Unknown energy detected. System reset in progress. Daniel stared. What did you do? She said, I reminded them of what they erased. The ship began to shake. One of its wings turned inward. It began to descend, not with purpose, but confusion. Then another signal came, this one soft like a whisper. The console lit again, this time with a different glow. She stepped to it, eyes wide, hands trembling. She said, they are near. Daniel asked, your people? She nodded slowly, but then her face changed. Not joy, not fear. Something else. She said, they come to judge. Daniel asked, you or us? She looked at him, said, both. Outside, the first ship tried to rise again, its weapons charged. The base shook. Daniel reached for his toolkit, started rewiring the base defenses. Old parts, old code, but still alive. She placed her hand on his shoulder, sighed. You fight without knowing who wins. Replied, I fight because you should not be alone. She turned and faced the door. The orb followed her like a moon. The sky opened. A second ship appeared. White and silver, silent but massive. Daniel felt the ground shift. 2 forces now in one place. One to destroy, one to decide. She stepped into the open, her arms raised, her voice strong. I am the voice of what you broke. I am the child of what you buried. But I am not your enemy. The ships hovered above. One hot with rage, one cold with law. Daniel held the orb close. It was warm, alive, watching the canyon. Waited. Time waited. One voice would now shape what came next. She chose humanity. Sky was no longer blue or silver. It was something else now, split between two ships. Split between two choices. One ship waited with fire in its heart, the other with silence in its breath. One came to erase, the other came to witness. The girl stood between both, her feet on broken ground, her eyes on both skies, her heart divided by memory and promise. The crystal orb floated behind her, glowing brighter than ever, its energy reaching the ships like a voice with no sound. Daniel stood at the edge of the canyon, holding the orb's twin echo, his hands shaking not from fear but from understanding. He knew now that no weapon would decide what came next, only truth. The ship that hunted her opened its weapons again, cannons, bright engines screaming. No more hesitation. White ship hovered without movement, no fire, no signal, only watching. The girl raised her hand, her skin shimmered like starlight caught in wind. Her voice rose not in anger but in memory. She spoke in her ancient tongue. The air responded like it had waited centuries for her words. The earth around her pulsed, the symbols from her people rose from the rocks, glowing, spinning, dancing. The hunter ship tried to scan, systems failed one by one, screens turned to static inside. That ship voices argued, she is one, but she is all she carries, the memory. Destroy her or be judged. The girl looked at Daniel, her eyes full of everything: pain, hope, fire, water. He whispered, what do you choose? She stepped forward slowly, her hands open, her face calm. She said, I was born of stars and storm, but I have lived among your dust. I have seen cruelty, but I have also seen kindness. She pointed at the hunter ship. You took from me what can never be returned, but you cannot take what I have become. She turned to the white ship. You came for law, for order, but I am not a case. I am not a number. I am a voice, and I choose to speak. The crystal orb rose higher. It split into pieces, each piece holding light and sound. They formed a ring above her, a halo not of faith, but of memory. She walked into the circle, her body lifted slowly, her voice louder. Now I carry the weight of my world, but I do not carry hate. She turned to the sky, to both ships, and said the words that changed everything. I choose them. The wind stopped, the canyon held its breath. The hunter ship froze in mid-fire, its core flickered, its weapons vanished into air like they had never existed. The white ship opened its light, a beam not of destruction, but recognition. From inside the beam came a figure, tall, wearing silver robes of her people, face marked with time. The girl looked at the figure and bowed, not in fear but in love. The figure spoke. You are not alone, she replied. No, but I was ready to obey. The figure looked at Daniel and at the orb still glowing in his hands. You protected the last memory. He replied, no, she protected me. The girl lowered back to the ground. The ring faded, the sky cleared. The ships moved back slowly into the stars. Daniel walked to her, placed the orb into her hands. It pulsed once, then dimmed. He asked, will you leave now? She said, I was the last flame of a dead world, but now I am the first spark of something new. He said, you do not owe us anything. She smiled. That is why it matters. The ships disappeared beyond clouds. The base returned to silence. The canyon held the echo of her choice. Later the world would speak of a day when the sky changed, when weapons failed, when a girl without armor made armies fall. But Daniel would remember only this: the way she stood in silence, the way she looked at him, and the way she whispered thank you without sound. She never gave her name again, not because it was forgotten, but because it was no longer needed. She had chosen, and that choice had chosen the future.